The Cincinnati Bengals have one of the best offenses in the NFL, but last year were held back because of a very, very bad defense. This season, the defense really might not be that much better, but the offense is still going to be one of the best in the league, and that might be enough to carry Cincinnati to the playoffs. It's really going to depend on the schedule. And that schedule does give them a pretty easy first game against the Cleveland Browns. It is on the road. But the Browns are starting old man Joe Flacco at quarterback, and I don't think that they're going to have a very good offense. Just to be honest, I think the matchups here work very much in favor for the Bengals. Their offense is one of the few that can really score against a solid Browns defense. And I think that the Browns offense is going to be a little bit slow out of the gate this season. And I think the Bengals will be able to slow them down enough that they should be able to win this game on the road, moving to 1-0.
Another easy game in week two against the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence looking to bounce back after having a pretty bad season last year. And he got some help with Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner from last season, joining the team. Now, he does look like he's going to be playing both sides of the ball. I think they could use him a little bit more on defense, but that is a solid wide receiver too to pair with Brian Thomas Jr. But all that being said, this defense is still not going to be up to par to stop this Bengals offense. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have such a good connection, and Chase Brown has really burst onto the scene as one of the better running backs in the NFL. I really don't see this Bengals offense struggling against this Jaguars team from the fact that it's at home. Bengals will move to 2-0. Then it's a road trip against the Vikings, and I don't know how to predict this Vikings team because this offense is still going to be very solid in terms of its weapons and offensive playmakers. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in football. And if it's not him, it's Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson is number two. The rest of the receiving core, along with TJ Hawkinson, is very good, and Aaron Jones is still a very solid running back. But the question surrounding JJ McCarthy as the starter after Sam Darnold led the Vikings to the playoffs and one of the best records in the NFL. I don't know if McCarthy coming off of an injury is going to be able to lead the Vikings to that amount of success. The defensive line is still fairly good, but I don't feel very strong about this secondary either. I think this could turn into a bit of a shootout, especially if JJ McCarthy plays a lot better than we expect. And since this is at Minnesota, but the Bengals are just the more experienced team here, we're going to lean with Joe Burrow over the Vikings here as they move to 3-0.
And it's a road trip to face the Denver Broncos. And Bo Nix was one of the more surprising rookie quarterbacks, I would say, last season. He had a very impressive year, very similar to Jaden Daniels, although not quite as good. But still, I think the Broncos are going to have one of the better offenses in the NFL and are going to have a very solid season overall. I think this is the first time the Bengals are playing a team that might actually be better than them. Having to go on the road to do it as well, I think is going to be pretty tough. So we have the Broncos winning this one, dropping the Bengals to 3-1.
This is going to be a really interesting matchup because you have Jamar Chase, as I said, probably the best wide receiver in the NFL. If it's not him, it's Justin Jefferson going up against the reigning DPOI in Pat Surtain, arguably the best corner in the game. This is going to be such a fun matchup, but I do think the Broncos can pull off a little bit of an upset at home on Monday night.
Then it's back home for the Bengals to face the Detroit Lions. And I think the Lions are still going to be a very solid team this year. The amount of weapons that they have on offense is going to be a very big problem for this Bengals defense. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. I just can't really see the Bengals slowing them down enough. Even though the Bengals are at home, I think they drop this game as well, falling to 3-2.
That's a road trip against another NFC North opponent. This time it is the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers got so much better and turned into a legitimate Super Bowl contender when they traded for Micah Parsons to add to this defense. Now, they still have the same problems in their cornerback room. It's not very strong, but Xavier McKinney can still do a lot in that secondary. The linebackers and defensive line are still very, very good. And then offensively, Jordan Love continues to make some strides each season. Josh Jacobs, one of the better running backs in the NFL. And this wide receiver room, even though it doesn't really have a true wide receiver one, has a lot of guys that can do their job well. And there's a lot of hype surrounding Matthew Golden, their first round draft pick at the wide receiver position to turn into that wide receiver one. So I think the Packers are one of the most complete teams that we will see this season. Could turn into a shootout against the Bengals, but with the concerns on the defense for Cincinnati, we are going to go with the Packers. It's very tough to beat the Packers at Lambeau as well. So this will drop the Bengals to 500 before they play the Steelers, one of the most heated rivalry games in the AFC North. And the Steelers got Aaron Rodgers during free agency to replace Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And I'm not super high on the acquisition, but I do think Aaron Rodgers was a semi good quarterback last season after returning from his injury. Adding the fact that DK Metcalf is now his star wide receiver, and he has one of the best defenses on the other side of the ball with TJ Watt, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, and Joey Porter Jr. This Steelers team is going to be very good. Thursday night at Cincinnati, though, we are going to go with the better offense. The offense we know for sure will put up a good fight, and that is the Bengals offense. So they will go back to above 500 at 4-3.
Then the schedule gets a little bit easier before the bye week as they head back home. Two pretty similar teams, I would say, at least as far as the quarterback goes, having to deal with dual threat guys. And both of those quarterbacks were drafted by the Chicago Bears, but the first team they're playing is the New York Jets, who have Justin Fields as their starter. They also have Garrett Wilson trying to recreate that college connection, basically copying the Bengals with what they have. I think that Fields and Wilson are going to have a strong connection this year, but aside from that, the Jets offense I just don't think is going to be enough for this team to truly be a playoff contender despite having a very good defense. So I think the Bengals should be able to win this game. The matchups really do favor them here. One of these games that they can just win by having a better offense alone. And then kind of the same thing with the Bears. I think the Bears all around are a more complete team than the Jets, so this game will be a little bit more difficult. They have an intriguing young offense, I would say. You got Caleb Williams at quarterback. You've been drafting young wide receivers the last few years. So the Bears are going to be a much better team in the next few seasons. This year, still kind of young, still learning. I think that this is one where the Bengals can kind of just win based on experience, but it might be a little bit more of a high scoring game than we saw with the Jets, as both of these offenses are going to be much better. The Bengals defense isn't quite as good, so I could see the Bears putting up some points, but I just don't think they'll be able to slow down Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase enough to win this game. So we have the Bengals here. And then out of the bye week, it is the second matchup with the Steelers. Connor hit most of the points earlier on. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a very solid year again this season. And this should be a much closer game given that the Steelers have the home field advantage. I actually think that they can win this one, particularly because it's tough to beat the same team twice. And when you throw in that home field advantage and the fact that the Bengals defense isn't going to be great, I think that DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers, and the rest of this Steelers offense can put up enough points that with the home field advantage, maybe they can slow down the Bengals offense as well. And TJ Watt gets a big player too on defense. Steelers are able to win this one in a tight battle.
After that, they take on the New England Patriots, who are a team we are very high on going into this season. Drake May looked very good in the second half of his rookie year, and this team just got better. Will Campbell was an addition they made on the offensive line that they used their first round draft pick on. They added Stephon Diggs to the wide receiver room, which has been pretty lackluster the past few seasons. And Trevion Henderson is now in the backfield, and he's looking like a big X factor for this team. Not to mention, this defense is led by Christian Gonzalez, one of the best young secondary players in the NFL. This Patriots team is going to be one that can be really competitive. And the Patriots even won this game last year I don't think it's going to be the same story this year. I think the Bengals offense will be much better with a completely healthy Joe Burrow this year. And this defense, I think, can still get some stops against a pretty young Patriots offense. So the Bengals will move to 7-4 before going on the road to take on the Baltimore Ravens, who are looking like they will be one of the best teams in the NFL once again. This backfield of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry is going to be so tough to stop. Not to mention a receiving core that consists of, say, Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. And then this defense is absurd. Just looking at the secondary, you have Marlon Humphrey, Malachi Starks, who they just drafted, Kyle Hamilton, who just signed an extension, is one of the best safeties in the NFL. And they got Jair Alexander during free agency. This Ravens team is probably the most complete team we will see this season. Thursday night, prime time on the road. Bengals will have a tall order to get this win. I don't think they will be able to do it. Ravens get the win here. And then it's another tough matchup, back-to-back games against some of the best teams in the NFL. This is a road trip against the Bills now. Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, still doesn't have a wide receiver core, but that has not stopped him in his NFL career. This defense made some improvements, getting Joey Bosa from the Chargers, as well as re-signing Tre'Davious White into the secondary. I don't think it will matter if they don't have the star-studded offensive and defensive players that a lot of teams have. If you have Josh Allen, you are one of the best teams in the NFL. On the road, Bills have one of the better home field atmospheres. It's going to be a tough ask for this Bengals team, especially if they don't have an answer for Josh Allen. It's going to be another game that the Bengals actually drop, so they fall to 7-6.
Then it's a pretty quick game two with the Baltimore Ravens. This time, the Bengals get them at home. Similar theme to what we were talking about earlier. It is very difficult to beat the same team twice. The Ravens won game one when they had the home field advantage. Now the Bengals do. And kind of like we've been hinting at the whole video, the Bengals have a very, very good offense. And they have the ability, without a doubt, to outscore the Ravens in one of these games. I think that their best option is going to be the home game. And while the Ravens are going to be a really good team this year, I think they are definitely a better and more complete team than the Bengals. Cincinnati absolutely can steal one, and I think it will be the home game. So that brings them up to 8-6. Then it's a road trip to face the Dolphins. We really aren't super high on the Dolphins this year. I don't think they're going to be very good. Just too many injury problems with all of their best players over the past few seasons. And I would be shocked if they can all stay healthy. You've had Tua dealing with concussions. You've had Devon A-Chain be injured. You've had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at wide receiver struggle with injuries. They just haven't been able to go a full season without losing one of those four players, and their offense just isn't the same when those guys go down. So I do not think that the Dolphins are going to have a good season. This one's a Sunday night game as well, so might be a little bit tougher for the Bengals, but I still think that Cincinnati's just going to outscore them here. It'll be that simple. So that brings them up to 9-6 and really in a good spot to try and make the playoffs.
Another tough game, though, against the Cardinals. Another team we are pretty high on going into this season. Kyler Murray in a really critical season for his career if he wants to remain in Arizona. But he has an offense that can produce and help him remain an Arizona Cardinal. Marvin Harrison Jr. is looking a lot better in year two. Trey McBride is one of the most underrated tight ends in the NFL. And James Conner is still a solid piece in their backfield. But this defense is going to be the biggest thing for why we think the Cardinals are going to be such a good team this year. They added such great players through the draft. Will Johnson being the biggest among them. He's already going to be a starter after falling in the draft because of an injury, but he's going to be a stud right out of the gate. Not to mention also drafting Walter Nolan, although he's dealing with an injury, but still going to be a solid addition to this defensive line, as well as getting two Ohio State Buckeyes to join Marvin Harrison Jr. and Cody Simon and Denzel Burke. This is going to be a really tough game for the Bengals here, one that I could see going either way, but we know for sure what we are getting out of the Bengals. I do think with Trey Hendrickson returning on this defensive line, he is going to be the difference maker on this defense, even if the secondary can't hold up. It's going to be a really interesting game, one that will have a lot of swing in the playoff picture, but the Bengals are going to get the win here before another game against the Browns, starting their season and ending their season with the Cleveland Browns. And this will be an interesting one considering what the playoff picture might look like. If the Bengals aren't playing for a number one seed, which I don't think they would be at their current record, and if they aren't in contention for a division title, they might rest their starters at this point, which might give the Browns a little bit of an advantage considering how good this defense is with Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, who was added in the draft along with Denzel Ward. Even if the starters do play in this game, it wouldn't shock me if the Browns played spoiler with whoever their starting quarterback might be because Jerry Jeudy is still on this offense and he had a pretty solid season in the second half of last year. It's not going to be one that a lot of Bengals fans are going to be happy to see, but we do have the Browns actually stealing a game from Cincinnati to cap the Bengals season at 10-7, which still might be good enough to make the playoffs.
And it is also an improvement from what we saw from Cincinnati last season when they went 9-8. I actually think 9-8 is the floor for the Bengals this year. Their offense, in my opinion, is just too good for them to finish below 500. I think the ceiling is as high as 13-4. We need to see a little bit of defensive improvement to have this happen. But I really could see the Bengals having a very impressive season, potentially rivaling the Ravens for winning the division. The Vegas over-under is at 9.5, slightly favoring the over. So basically right there with our 10-7 prediction, and a little bit iffy on whether or not they could go 9-8 just like last year. But I really don't think we'll see the Bengals below 500 this season. I'd say that's what we are most confident in.
It really comes down to can this defense make some strides with not very good players? Trey Hendrickson can only do so much, and this offense can only do so much. We saw it last year. The Bengals put up a lot of points against teams, and that still wasn't enough to get some wins, like against the Ravens, for example. But if the Bengals can keep some of these games closer, and if this offense stays completely healthy, particularly Joe Burrow, then the Bengals might make the playoffs once again and cause some noise, maybe giving some of these top teams a run for their money once again. But you'll have to come back when we actually reveal what our way too early NFL playoff looks like. But for right now, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we will see you in the next video.